Morning, everybody.
Morning.
After developing the rapport, which we saw in the last slide, I'll probably tell you what are the things which have to be stressed upon. Now when the trainer comes in place, don't you think that there are certain things which the trainer also wants to tell and also the learner wants to learn? The option is yours, whether the preference has to be given first to the learner or the things which the trainer wants to share. Let's see what. So first thing is, there are certain things which are difficult to learn. Listen to what the questions that the learners ask. Now there may be certain people who will be asking several questions and the same type of questions will be coming from all over. But there are certain things which the topic also needs more of an emphasis. Or it is those same questions which have the direct linkage with the topic which is being taught. So it so happens that without clearing those questions in the basic preamble of starting the class, it may not be necessarily easy to go ahead with. So let's see what's there in the next slide. There's some ways to emphasize, and specifically let us try to understand what are the ways to emphasize. Spend ample time discussing about the point. The moment you get a point, don't leave it there and don't jump onto the next person. The second thing is ask questions related to the key points. There are key points which have to be revolving around which needs more emphasis and stress at that time. Next, use visual aids to highlight the key points. There are certain points which need visual aids and certain other things which do not really need. So we'll have to make a discrimination in this. Use examples as and when possible. Try to use more and more examples, maybe of your own or maybe of the learners, but there has to be some commonality somewhere. Review what you have done. Things which have been on to review previously, make sure that everything is going ahead well. Organize your material. No matter what the material is, maybe on the slide or maybe the materials which the learners are carrying themselves, or maybe you can ask the learners to keep some things of their own around. And there will be certain other things which the trainer himself has to manage. And those things, all these are materials which a person necessarily has to manage. Avoid vague languages. The languages are very particularly different in different cultural contexts. We should be making sure that as and when we are into some different audience, we should try to gauge the audience learning expectations. The next thing which I'd like to concentrate is about ask, pause, and call evaluate. Just close. Now, it generally happens that the learner is in a teaching mode. You can't prevent them from explaining more often. But the thing is, since we are in behavioral training, we often need to pause more than talk more. So the way in which one person has to be brought into the active condition is to have a direct contact, internal contact, or let's say a type of a rapport building exercise. How it actually happens is right. Ask the question first. Pause to allow your learners time to think about it. Call and learn after the pause and evaluate the response after the learner has given an answer. So you have to call the learner, but before calling the learner, the very important thing is to pause. The moment I pause, then only somebody else is going to be active, otherwise the teaching goes on and on. So there's one thing that needs to be done is pause, and there are some ways of pausing. I don't go into the depth of what pausing is all about. But then pause is something which is very critical in order to bring about behavioral change. And the last one is evaluate the response after the learner has given an answer. Once the call has been made and you have taken the call on one person, you will have to evaluate entirely that particular person given his previous behaviors, probably his heredity and so many other things which we technically learn, maybe through some models which authors have written. And this brings us home that whether we have made a proper linkage with what we have already learned. So the models to which we are ideally learn may not be the same ones which we have learned, but probably what he has learned may be different. So it has made him rigid. So there's always conflict of interests, and there are certain things which, there are so many things in the pool that we don't know we should open. I give a close this.
Let's say
Okay. Give me 2 minutes. Yeah, you're coming up with the question.
the last point, if you can show that.
Okay.
It says evaluate the response after the learner has given an answer.
Right.
Now, in case the response that your participant gives is not what you're looking for, entirely different from the objective of the session, how do you get it back to the session and how do you respond to your participant?
Now, in this case, when we state that the objective has been set as to what exactly the parameters of learning is all about. I don't know what is the outcome of learning, as Mr. Chandra has been telling. Now, what happens outside the training is beyond my control. That's for sure. But then there are certain expectations which I have myself, because since they are my expectations, that my learners are going to gain something out of this session. They may gain what I expect also. That's can't be said. But then, if they want something else of the training, that is the first preference which the trainer has to give all the time, more credibility, because that's the reason why he's here. So the evaluation part, the moment you start evaluating, I should be in a very sophisticated position whereby I can dictate that, okay, for this kind of evaluation I got this model, and for another kind of evaluation I got another model, no matter whether I want it or the other person wants it. So this is all about modeling the expectations rather than actually going to evaluate on the basis of one-on-one basis.
But I think our question becomes relevant because if there are 50 participants and if there are 50 of them are driving in 50 different directions, then what models can we apply? It gets confusing.
Yeah, for example, here, your objective of the session is maybe coaching. You're training on coaching now. So in that case, I throw a question to the audience, and the response that you get is not what you're expecting, and not relevant to coaching at all. The response. So how do you evaluate, or rather, how do you get back on track?
The thing is, one more thing which becomes vague, but it's not wide. Now, I made a difference about what there's a difference between giving it a wide approach and not letting it the learner to overpower the trainer in the first place. But then becoming vague in between and getting ahead with different models is one of the ways in which a trainer has to be equip himself with. So maybe there are some other ways in which emphasis has to be given to how to get reins in the trainer's hand. But then as a behavioral trainer, what I feel is it's all free, and I don't see any reason why learner would take away most of the learning sessions, okay, than the trainer does. Learner doesn't do that. That's what I feel. Learner doesn't take away so much of evaluation. Learning away from him unless and otherwise situation demands so, it is compelling him that way.
I just mentioned one thing, that coaching which you mentioned, it is generally not that when you're coaching 50 students at a time. Coaching is more like one-to-one, maybe one-to-one.
You're training them on coaching.
Training them on coaching, that becomes a difference. But again, the evaluation part, you'll not be able to evaluate on certain parameters, okay, how they able to answer the questions correctly or not. That's not the aspect. The main point is, when you're talking about evaluating the response, whether they have actually understood the concept we are discussing or not. It's not getting the right answers. It's their understanding.
I think that's exactly what Sajita was asking. Your session is on teaching coaching, and the question is like, what happens when I go to the office and my code breaks, my program breaks? What happens? It's not relevant to the topic.
Yeah. To my sense, that was the question. Right. What I can make is, to my sense, a person is mutable to a certain extent. Now I am become mutable during the training to a certain extent, to a large extent than what is expected or what is anticipated for a learner. But then it so happens that much of mutation happening or that much of changing happening may be one of the keys where a feeler or even a intuitor may be looking for. I don't know, there are free spaces of learning. I don't know which one, where to set those limits in the first place. So there are differences which have to be overcome depending upon what the subject matter of discussion is and what is going to be taught about.